Run it. I can't take no loss. I don't even know what it costs. I hit the ground, then it go off. Yeah, hit the ground, then it go off. Yeah.
Paul Brabson. It's All the Pressure podcast. We've been off for a minute, right?
It's been a long minute.
July 14th, Sunday. And we have two goats with us today. Dave Beach, Paul Howell. Man, it's a pleasure to have you guys. And, you know, Paul, we go back to June of 2016. The Cavs are on that march to the finals. We're going at it with these guys all the time on Facebook.
I remember it well.
And I know you and your cousin Megan, of course, against.
She's your cousin.
Yes,
that explains a lot.
Oh yes, oh yeah. No, we're gonna dig deep today. A lot's gonna be uncovered. But going back to that Cavs Warriors series, of course, I was pro Warriors, right? And I think you were pro Warriors, right?
100%.
Because you weren't rooting for LeBron.
No.
Across from us, Beach and Paul Howell, I mean, two of these guys wanted the Cavs. They were diehard Cleveland.
Absolutely.
They didn't care. You know, they were hell with Steph Curry. You know, and going back to that time, I was traveling across the country. I was in Frisco as that series was being played because I went to swim.
You had a lot going on.
Yes, I did. I sure did.
Yeah.
But if you remember, we had made bets.
Yes, we did.
And if the Cavs were to win, I was supposed to take these two guys out to Olive Garden.
I remember.
Together, and you were supposed to film it on Facebook Live. So,
David, has that happened
No,
yet?
okay, so that's why, you know, I kind of got the hat on. My eyes are covered. You're trying to hide a little bit.
We should have brought a Cavs jersey for him.
That's true.
But so this is when we set up this podcast. Well, when you set up this podcast, I thought, man, do I really want to do? I want to show because you know I've been hiding for 8 years, and then today is the day of
you
judgment.
could have actually worn a Cavs jersey because LeBron's not there anymore, so who cares?
Well,
he's still in our hearts, so
not yours.
First of all, it's a pleasure having you guys, and I do want to say this. I'll say it to Josh in the back there, and Paul and Dave. We should be in church right now.
I just got out of church.
Okay, well, good.
I went to the 8:30 service, so I can make this.
I love
God is
Beach.
good.
Yes, amen. Yeah, I just know I should be in church. We started going out to Christ Community Chapel in Hudson.
Yeah, okay.
I've been to a lot of churches in my life. For me, it's by far the greatest religious institution I've ever stepped foot in.
You said in Hudson?
In Hudson.
So how does one find a place that far away?
Karen Gonadikis, she used to help me and Dre out a lot. I talk about her in my book, and they go out there, and so we
she just invited and you guys.
Yeah, this was a ways back. She invited us, and we had been there before, but then we started going, and it's great. Like last week, we're at a service of 3,000 people outdoors.
Wow.
It was incredible. And there's people from all over, every color, every nationality. It's like going to the airport. You sit and walk and hear in different languages. I mean, it's crazy. And I think that's what heaven's going to look like.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Because Sunday is very segregated. Black churches, white churches, etc.
Absolutely.
Anyways, Paul.
Yes.
There's no excuse. We should be in church right now.
I've been taking my mom to church every Sunday, but my sister actually stepped up this week and said that she would go ahead and transport my mother so I could be here with you three.
Yeah,
appreciate that.
I got you.
I want to fist bump you all the time.
We're here. I'm here for you, David. I'm here
Dave,
for you.
me and Paul have been doing this podcast for what, 14, 15 months?
Something like that.
I've never been more comfortable in a setting from the get-go than I am right now with these guys. Like, we've done some good podcasts. We've been familiar with a lot of the people. But like I feel at home with these guys. And this dates way back of going back on Facebook, going to the banter. You know, of course, when I do pass away, Paul is going to be officiating my funeral with
hopefully
Tim
Paul's
Stoltz.
still here.
True. I'm sure he will
Sweet
be.
Pea's given me a lot of material to be able to use during that.
Oh, a lot.
So let's hope that doesn't happen for a few.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know, Paul. As I'm looking across at Dave and Paul, I'm thinking, where do we start? I mean, do we start with the LeBron James banter? Is that where we should start? I think we maybe start there. No,
I mean, really, in this setting, you could really just start with whatever comes out of your mouth. I mean, it don't really have to start with anything specific.
And I want to touch base real quick. I think the comfortability of all this is happening. Part of it is the Barberton connection here.
Yeah.
It runs deep from Paul to you to myself. I think we all feel comfortable in here. I think we're all from Barberton, and I think that kind of just brings us together. You know, we kind of. I don't know if we all share the same views, but we all share the same views when it comes to like we're all from Barberton, and we all kind of understand where we were from,
right?
What brought us to this position, So that's why I also feel comfortable. You know, I think we could also come in here multiple times and talk about multiple discussions, and I think we would feel comfortable every time.
No question about it. No question about it. I want to go back to, let's start with about LeBron James. Mm-hmm. You guys were big LeBron James supporters. I think it's blasphemy that both of you would sit there and actually even dare to think that LeBron belongs in the same area code with Michael Jeffrey Jordan or Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bean Bryant.
Man.
Talk to us. Come on.
That's tough. I like Michael. I grew up watching Michael, Sunday morning TV, you know, not even morning, Sunday afternoon TV, NBC, NBA, you got Michael and the Knicks, and always had Michael on there. And I like Michael. I always thought Michael was the GOAT. Yeah. And I think it comes up in any discussion. You could have GOAT number 1, GOAT number 2. You could have GOAT 3. I personally don't put Kobe in this discussion. I never was a Kobe fan. Yeah. I like Kobe. I respect what he did. I like his fire, his drive. I think he made everybody better. But I think when you take 32 shots a game, 35 shots a game, I think anybody in this room can go out there and take 35 shots a game and probably get our stats that we wanted. When it came to Michael, you knew what you were getting out of Michael. Everybody in the whole entire world, the arena, the game, everybody knew what they were getting out of Michael. I like LeBron better because I witnessed it better. It was Cleveland. It was firsthand. He brought us our championship. I celebrated that night in the streets. Probably one of the greatest nights other than my kid being born, my marriage. I celebrated in that street until 3 o'clock in the morning.
I seen you.
I made Good Morning America.
In the streets.
I made the Cavs hype video that they played the next year. I was on the front screen of it every game. That, to me, is much more above what Michael ever did. I love Michael. I think he is GOAT number 2. And in some conversations, I could even put him, I would accept the argument of GOAT number 1, even. But to me, witnessing that, being a part of it, being the Akron kid, coming to Cleveland, winning us a championship.
So it meant more to you because it was just closer to home.
There's nothing better than that to me. You know?
Yeah. For you, it was personal.
Yes. Yeah. You know, because I lived through those Cavs back in the day. I was at that game. I was at that series. I didn't go to the shot game, but I went to that series with the Boy Scouts and did the salute in the center.
1989 series?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I went to the game 1 because the Cavs actually was the number 1 seed in that series. I went to game 1 and got to do the salute with the Boy Scouts. So I lived all that. I hated Michael just because of that. Old Richfield Coliseum. And there's a funny story about that. The second to the last game that series, or that season, not even the playoffs yet. Yeah. I was there with the Boy Scouts, and we got to go there before everybody else. And we were sitting there in the seats, and their seating was the old collapsible seats.
Right.
And I was sitting there with my friends Mike Overfield and Joe Harris and a couple other guys running down the line. And the game hasn't started. Nobody's in the arena. And I step up, and I was acting like I was talking to Mike, and I said, I'm going to stand up, and I'm going to celebrate like this. And I stood up, and I cheered, and my knees hit the stand in front of us, or the seats in front of us, and I went, bam. Bam, 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 and it went all the way around the arena.
Wow!
And until it hit like a break, you know, and everybody stopped and looked at me, and I was like, "Oh man, that was my fault," you know. So they had to come in and put the seats back together and stuff.
Let me ask you, going back to that time real quick, who was your favorite player on the Cavs team at that point?
Mark Price.
Okay.
To this day, he's still my all-time favorite player. Yeah. Grace Church actually is holding a basketball camp with Mark Price. Nice. It just happened last week. And I would have loved to take my kids there, but they were
Norton Grace Church.
Bath.
Oh, Bath. Okay, Bath. Yeah.
But my kids were too young to attend, so we'll attend next year. But Mark Price is still to this day. He invented the split, the double team split.
Yeah,
you know, where they come in as a double team and you split the 2 defenders. He was actually almost the creator of that.
Yeah,
you know, and a lot of guys credit him to splitting that double team and then hitting that jumper on the corner.
Old Georgia Tech, Paul.
Yeah,
who did he play for? Georgia Tech.
Yeah,
the guy with the white hair.
Bobby
Cremins. That's right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
You know, let me preface for the Cavs. First and foremost, I'm a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, more than a LeBron James fan.
Right.
When he came back the first time, I forgave, and I was all for it. And then we got the title in 2016.
Yeah.
But then he left for a second time. And it's kind of like, okay, you're dating a girl and, she may be unfaithful or cheat on you once. You give that forgiveness. Mm-hmm. But when she does it again, it's a little different. So my love for LeBron James has faded quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
Now, it's funny because I used to work at a drive-through on Copley Road called Al's Discount Drive-Through. Al Kurilka lived by Newton,
Matt Swafford? He lived there.
Oh, yeah. Matt Swafford, yes. Wow. God rest his soul.
God rest Matt Swafford.
Yeah. But Gloria used to come into the drive-through 4 or 5 times a week. And
speaking of LeBron's mom.
Yes, Gloria James. Yeah. And she was a trip. I mean, she was wild. She was a flirt. She, was crazy. Yeah. But I'm sure LeBron probably was with her a time or two, but he had only been 6, 7 years old at the time. So I may have known LeBron as a kid, just didn't realize he was in the car.
I would just tell people you knew him.
Yeah, there you go. But, 2016, I agree. But if we had that same conversation in 2024, I would probably be on your guys' side in regards to LeBron. I'm about loyalty. And this guy has left us high and dry twice. And he left us in shambles, unfortunately. You look at the years after he left, we struggled as a Cavs fan at these, 25 and 57 records.
Right.
So my tunes changed a little bit around LeBron. And I would say Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time.
I think it was easier for LeBron to leave the second time because Kyrie kind of helped that along by leaving himself.
I would agree with that.
If Kyrie stays, they're still challenging.
Yeah, 100%. And I to touch base on what you just said, I kind of concur that statement. Mm-hmm. When he did leave the second time, it did hurt. Mm-hmm. And I'm not as big of a LeBron James fan. Now I root for him if he's in the finals versus someone other than the Cavs. Mm-hmm. I'm going to root for him. Just because, and just like Kyrie, I was rooting for Kyrie in that Dallas series. I actually lost some money thinking that Dallas would win that series. But overall, I'm a Cavs fan. I love the Cavs. I love any Cleveland sports and I love any Ohio team other than the Buckeyes. And I like the Buckeyes. I just don't root for the Buckeyes
because you're a Michigan fan.
I'm a Michigan fan. Yeah,
it's interesting because I was just about to say, do you love the Buckeyes like that? I don't. How does that work, Beach? Go on.
So we live
because
in Michigan.
The Barberton connection to Michigan, is that what it is?
Yeah, no, I'm from Michigan. So my family, my mom moved down here, and when I was right before kindergarten started.
Yeah.
All my family still live in Michigan. We still go to Michigan 2-3 times a year to visit. We try to, stay in contact with them as much as we can.
Yeah.
But we moved down here during the rubber industry boom. My grandfather came down here to sell insurance, worked for Goodyear, worked for Firestone, was an insurance agent, bounced around through the rubber companies. So my mom kind of just followed them down here.
Yeah.
So that's when we came down here, all the Tigers, they were good. But other than that, the Lions were terrible.
Oh, yeah.
They had Barry Sanders. They were terrible, So the Browns, we had the 80 Browns, the 89 Browns, the 88 Browns, Bernie Kosar, Brian Sipe. When we came here, that's what that was. So I kind of just hopped on the bandwagon with that. But in my household, you didn't hop up bandwagons when it came to college football. They're Michigan. I have aunts and uncles that worked for the University of Michigan.
Yeah.
My aunt was in the law department for a long time. Then she moved on to be head of ticket sales for a long time.
Wow.
So there's a lot of connections in my family through college football in Michigan.
What city in Michigan?
So we're from Brighton and Howell,
okay,
which is 45 minutes north of Ann Arbor.
Okay.
So it's right outside of there.
You know what they say about Ann?
Oh yeah,
she's not
a nice woman.
I've got a couple shirts with that on there. Yeah.
Paul Howell.
Yes.
Let me ask you a few things. I want to give you this chance because we had you on with John Squires, and we never had the opportunity to really talk about you and that East Side group, your Orioles teams. You were involved in a lot coming up in Barberton, and your dad was very influential. Chuck Howell was everywhere.
Yeah.
And involved. His impact was incredible.
I didn't know that was your dad.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know your dad really well.
Awesome.
Well, not really well anymore, but he was friends with my in-laws, Kevin and Dolores Wilson.
Okay.
And he would always be at their house. He's a dancing machine, man. When you
he can swing it. He can swing
He's
it.
a dancing machine. He came to my wedding.
I always say that me and Paul grew up in the greatest neighborhood in the history of Barberton. we had the group called the Hoodsmen. Mm-hmm. But you, on your side of town, and the group of kids you grew up with, the Kohlers, Gatto, Six, all those guys. I mean, you guys had a nice group too.
We really did.
Talk about all that.
Absolutely. My dad, he passed away probably 12 years ago. And when I spoke at his funeral, I talked about the 4 loves that my dad had, which was the Lord Jesus Christ, my mother and our family, the city of Barberton, and baseball. Those were his 4 loves. So I grew up having season tickets to football, basketball, all that. And my dad, started coaching Little League first with the Orioles, and we were 8, 9 years old. Right. Nick Karabatsis and his dad, John, was the first head coach. And we had some players. We had, Ray Vierheller and Jimmy Six and Tom Schnee. Had
Tron
Bobby
Jenkins.
Hathaway, Tron Jenkins, Ryan Woodford, Danny Kohler, Scott Rhodes. I mean, I could go on and on. Yeah, we had some nice teams, and of course, my dad was smart enough to ask Lee Six to help coach to make sure that no one recruited Jimmy to another team.
Exactly.
And then with the Woodford Warriors, our Pee Wee football team, under the tutelage of Bill Bauer. Bobby Kasich, Jack Haywood, Johnny Squires, Larice Rackley, Aaron Blanks. I mean, it could go on and on.
Oh, yeah.
So really just being involved in sports, kind of year round. I played basketball too. And when we were kids, it wasn't, they didn't have a whole lot of travel teams or, JO or where you weren't overlapping too much when it came to sports. So you could go from one sport to the next and play all 3.
Exactly.
So really grew up doing that. But then, of course, in the summertime, as soon as we'd wake up, we'd have tennis, baseball games in the street. We spray painted fields 100 yards for football. We had flags. We did two-hand tap. And then as soon as it got too dark to see the ball, then you'd play capture the flag until either the street lights came on or you heard your dad whistle for you. Yeah. So my house was kind of the hub of the East Side. A lot of the kids knew, well, if Paul was going to go ahead and plan or organize this activity, it's going to work.
Right.
So we'd have 8 to 15 kids that would play in the street until too many kids showed up. Then we'd run down to Woodford and then play on the blacktop, tennis ball, baseball, or we'd play out in the front yard football game. So that went on from like age 9 until like age 16, to be honest with you. Right. We kept playing and playing. So we did have a lot of great athletes, a lot of great times. That's where you were outside all day long in the summertime. It wasn't the computers. There was a little bit of video games, but it was Atari. It wasn't like it is now where, you're almost live inside the screen playing games. So we had a lot of fun times with a lot of great kids.
That sounds like they were very low key.
Well,
like you guys were playing sports, not getting in trouble?
No, not really. I mean, did we do some dumb things? If we'd find somebody to go TP or something like that, but nothing crazy where we were causing havoc throughout the neighborhood.
That's where Harvard came in.
Gotcha.
Harvard was the havoc. It was the problem.
And I had a little taste of that too. I was really close friends with Tim Widener.
Okay.
And I stayed up night at Tim's a lot. I kind of got involved with Tim because I had a little crush on his sister.
Right, gotcha.
Is that Wags?
Wags.
They might have called him Tim Widener on Harvard and Summit.
Yeah.
It's 2 different people.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, and have a little crush on Amy when I was a kid. She'd come over to Vacation Bible School. But Amy and I ended up becoming more like a brother-sister because I'd stay the night at Timmy's house a lot. We'd go to ball games and really built a connection there. So I had a taste or a flavor of the hood, with the Coons boys and the Brevs.
Paul affectionately called the hood nom.
Right. That's right, hood nom. So,
I wanted to say, though, speaking about your place being the hub, that's a great reflection on your dad because you were like an extension of him, basically, where the kids saw you and how they viewed you. It was... That speaks a lot about your father in my eyes.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because I've coached youth sports for now close to 30 years myself. My own kids growing up playing baseball or girls fast pitch softball, basketball. Yeah, I am assistant varsity coach for the Norton girls basketball team. Been with Brian Miller for about 12 years now. So I do credit my dad for a lot of those fundamentals of coaching and the X's and O's of things.
Right.
I kind of give my mom the credit about, how I encourage and motivate people.
Yeah.
But I think that my dad played a very large influence on, my adulthood when it comes to coaching youth sports.
For sure. Well, of course, your dad's passed, and so is Lee Six, both legends. But we would have put them under heavy scrutiny here on All the Pressure podcast.
Yeah.
Because they had some stacked teams. And I think they were in charge of running concessions. And we had a few questions for them. We wanted to dig deeper. We wanted to do an ESPN 30 for 30 about that and see if we could kind of find any connection, because they were loaded. I mean, they had all the good players. You want to talk about stacked teams? LeBron wasn't stacking teams. They were.
Yeah.
Lee Six and Chuck Howell were stacking teams on the east side.
And see, unfortunately, I didn't play baseball back then, so I wasn't a part of any of that.
Yeah.
Everything for me back then was basketball. Football, basketball, basketball.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that, the level of coaching that they did help kids who were marginal get much better, because they both really did know the game.
Right.
There were some kids at 8, 9 years old barely knew how to swing the bat or catch the ball. By the time they were 12, they were playing key positions. So I really did think that they coached well, but they also were smart about knowing where the kids lived, who, and the kids coming over to our house playing in the street gave them some opportunity to scout and recruit a little bit.
So since you've coached so much, because a lot of this brings up the way you was coached as a kid compared to the way that you coach kids now is completely different. So I don't coach right now, but I feel like years ago the coaches could bring more out of you than maybe they can now. Because I could be completely wrong, because you have to take a totally different stance with these kids. As we were kids, people jump in your face, and the more mad you got, the harder you played.
You're right.
Yeah.
The more they were on you, the madder you got, the better you wanted to be. Nowadays, you get on a kid,
Or it was out of fear.
They go tell their parents,
Oh, yeah.
and then the parents step in, and the parents say, "Hey, you're being a little tough on Johnny over here." And it's like, well, I didn't really do anything different to Johnny than I did over here to Stevie.
Right.
I would think Johnny should take it just as way as Stevie.
And I think most of the good coaches isn't like I'm picking on you. I'm just trying to get the best out of you I possibly can.
Yeah.
It might not look the greatest.
Yeah. I think there are still a lot of the same fundamentals and philosophies from back in the day, but I do agree it's a different from your approach. And it's way different coaching boys and coaching girls.
Absolutely.
When you're coaching girls, it's all about encouragement and confidence building. And once they get that, boy, they'll run through a wall for you. With boys, at least my experiences have been sometimes you just have to be bold and direct, because that's what they need. They need that structure. Where with girls, you give them a chance to, understand their talent, learn what's going on within the game and how to use their skill set to best help the team. And they're all in. So I do think that there's a difference in how you coach the boys and the girls. I will say I've always been one that's more low-keyed as a coach. I've never had a technical in my life. I've never been thrown out of a game.
Right.
I'm kind of the ambassador of the other coaches. I get along with all the other coaches. I don't feel that there's these rivalries.
Right.
Maybe internally during practice we're talking about the rivalry. But when it comes to the game, I always try to ensue, hey, this is still fun at the end of the day. This isn't life or death.
So if you're the compassionate one on the bench and your coach is the hard-nosed coach who's driving home the point, then you almost need that again. If you're the compassionate head coach, you almost need that drive home on the bench. You need that hard coach that's going to come in behind you. And when you got them all feeling nice and furry and fuzzy inside, he's going to come in behind you and totally wipe that out. And that's kind of what you're looking for in coaching, is that equal balance, And
I think it really has helped having the good cop, bad cop, or yin and yang, so to speak, because we actually have the girls in Norton. We've been to 7 regionals in the last 13 years.
Yeah, you guys have some great teams.
Yeah.
Great girls.
We actually made it to the state semifinal and hit a shot at the buzzer at double overtime from half court. That counted. And then they said it didn't.
It was good.
We did.
Oh, it was clearly good.
Yeah. I remember you showing me the screenshot. You were sending
I watched that thing over and over and over. It's good.
Yeah. So, we've had a lot of a really good run. And I think that, and other assistant coaches too, not just me, there's been some other great coaches that Brian's had.
Yeah.
But I do think that approach that we found a nice commonality in how to get these girls motivated but also to get them to buy in.
Nice.
Right.
Nice.
You know, it's interesting. Earlier when we walked in, we found out that me and Beach are both deaf in one ear. And I thought that was some interesting conversation that didn't get on camera.
Yeah.
And there was another thing I wanted to talk about too. We talked about first jobs, stuff like that. My first job was at White House Chicken in Barberton. I think I was making $3.75 an hour.
$4.25.
Were you at $4.25? So you're dating yourself now. How old are you?
46.
46. Okay, I didn't realize you were that old.
Yeah, I just
thought
turned
you were-
46 in May.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're 5. You were 78.
Yep, 78.
Kobe Bryant, 78 too.
Yep.
But Paul, what was your first job? How much were you making?
Well, when I was 14, I did have a paper route.
Okay, yeah.
Of course, then you still had to collect.
Yeah.
Of course, no one answers the door when you have to collect.
Right.
So you got this bill that you got to pay, and you're about $40 short because no one will answer their door to collect. So I did that for about a year, but then I started work at Belgrade Gardens. I lived right up the hill.
Yeah.
I was on Washington Avenue, right next to Woodford.
Right.
And $3.75 sounds about the going rate there. I worked with the Macco brothers,
Nice.
Chris, Jay, Botch, Mickey,
Yeah.
Joel Fry, Bobby Hitchcock.
Oh, you guys had fun while you were
Oh, it
were-
was
you guys-
it was insane.
Hey, so I only did the dishwashing for one day, and I was like, "This ain't for me."
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it was so hot.
I see.
Right, and it was back in what was it 89?
I was about to say back in the 80s too, you were busy.
Were
yeah.
Were you bussing?
I was bussing.
Okay.
Yes. Me and the Macco boys were all bussing, and we always like to hit on the waitresses
Oh, yeah.
and seeing the people come in. So we were kind of ornery at times, there.
bet.
But it was great fun, and me and the Macco boys have been great friends for decades now because we really had an opportunity to get to know each other.
Did you find yourself being encouraged or being even more brave by the fact that you were a big fan of Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan? I mean, did that help you as a kid?
It always has helped. My 50th birthday, September 12th, I actually met Ric Flair, and I got a picture of him. He's my
right.
screensaver.
That wasn't that long ago.
No, it was
yeah.
at the Giant Eagle in
Right.
Stowe.
This was just because you're not on Facebook no more.
I'm not.
So this is like a year before you got off Facebook.
No. He's been on
No.
Facebook for about almost a decade now.
I've been off a hot minute.
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was right before the 2020 election because there was just so much
Oh, yeah, it was
slander
awful.
and it was just nasty. I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? I think I've seen everybody that I wanted to see on Facebook,
Right.
make sure they're doing okay. So I think I'm good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my 50th birthday, Bob Lilly, another Chrisman Park legend, he said, "Hey, Flair's going to be at Giant Eagle. Let me take you there for your 50th birthday." So I got to meet the Nature Boy on my
Incredible.
50th birthday.
That's awesome.
It was funny thing is, he was like 6'1", 230 when he was wrestling.
Yeah.
The picture I have with him, I'm like 2 inches taller than him now. And I'm like 5'9.5".
Incredible.
So I don't know if his spine has done the accordion.
Oh,
that,
probably.
in the
Probably.
clothes.
imagine.
Probably. I mean, when you get older, you tend to shrink, right? That's just
Yeah,
And he was
he's not-
dropped on it multiple times.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
He's not very big in real life. He really isn't in person anymore.
incredible.
He didn't have to be big. His ego made up for his size.
Absolutely.
and he hasn't changed a bit as far as his ego. Like he's still going at it.
But that's
And
how he gets paid.
And he's a big Michigan fan.
Yeah,
he's
huge.
a big LeBron James fan.
Yeah.
a big Deion Sanders fan. I mean, he likes a lot of the controversial athletes. Like,
Yeah.
So let me touch base on that. I'm going to back up to the beginning of this podcast because when you had said about like Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
So when you had asked Dave about Kobe Bryant, here's my stance on Kobe Bryant. Not that anybody cares or not. Kobe Bryant to me is in my top 5 as far as conversation pieces. Is he the top 5 with like greatest basketball players in my opinion ever play? No. Yes, but no. He's the greatest copycat that you'll ever see in your life.
Okay, so
he
I was
copied
about ready to say
everything that
that's
Michael
blasphemy.
Jordan
Yes.
did.
You can
You're right.
barely tell their voices apart.
I mean,
Right,
he
right.
was the greatest copycat.
Yeah.
When
Yes.
he copied perfectly what Michael Jordan did,
Yes,
and
he
he
did.
continued it. So
Yeah,
to me,
he did.
if you're going to consider Michael Jordan the greatest, you got to kind of throw Kobe because he's the closest thing you're ever going to see to
No,
another
no
Michael
question
Jordan.
about it.
Well,
no question about it.
Too, Kobe, I think, may have shown the greatest redeeming situation of all time. I mean, he was hated with the situation that happened with the infidelity and,
Yep.
but then he
the
redeemed
accused
himself.
rape.
Correct.
Yeah.
Then the
in Colorado.
separation with Shaq left and everything. I mean, there was
Yes.
turmoil in LA
Yes.
for a minute.
And that redemption really came when he joined the Olympic team after we didn't win the gold
And they needed him.
and they needed him.
So I think the stance what he took on that made everybody's heart stop like, oh my God, this dude's legit, is when he looked at Gasol, who told all his players before, I'm running through him.
Yes.
And he was his teammate. I'm running through him. And he dropped him.
Yeah,
Everybody's
Paul
like,
Gasol tells that story all the time in interviews about he told him right before that game, he walked up and said, "I'm going to run through you."
Yep.
And he said, "No,
First
you're
play of the
not.
game.
We're friends. We're best friends here
Yeah.
on the court, off the court." And then he went back and told his team the same thing.
And he drilled him.
The first play, he set that pick, and Kobe ran right through him and put Gasol straight on his back.
Right.
Dave, this is why guys like me and Paul Brapson have never forgiven LeBron, because we knew what it was like to root for Larry Bird, Isaiah Thomas, Michael Jordan, animals who didn't care about being liked or being friends with everybody. And LeBron's the exact opposite.
Yeah, but to touch base on that, that's just the world we're living in. You know, I think all the athletes like that are like that nowadays. You know, they there's no longer you play 3 sports. You know, like Paul touched base earlier. Back then you played 3 sports. Football was in the fall, basketball or something was in the winter, baseball, softball was in the spring. And you did that as a constant revolving doors. Nowadays, you know, they spend 100% on soccer. They spend 100% on basketball. You know, there's no off season to play another sport. You dedicate your life to one sport. And I think that's almost what brings that about, is the fact that they're so dedicated to their sport. So, of course, they're going to be a little bit more cockier. They're going to be a little bit more all about themselves a little bit. You know, before, when you got to go from team to team to sport to sport, you did that with your friends. You know, and the friends that didn't play football, you caught back up with them the next week or the next season when you played basketball.
Right.
And the kids that didn't play basketball or football, you caught up with them when you played basketball. You know, so now you don't have that. You know, now you dedicate to basketball and you're always with the same basketball team and you're always with the basketball players. So you don't get to fill yourself out more, you know, like you did back then.
Right. I want to say that it's All the Pressure podcast for a reason.
Yeah.
I'll be damned if we come in here on a Sunday morning when we should be in church and not talk about the assassination attempt on President
I went to church.
Donald Trump yesterday.
Right.
We appreciate that, Dave. I really do.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that because it's important. The world is the way it is nowadays because men have lost that fear of God, that healthy fear of God that we should live with every day.
Yeah.
If you lived every day and whatever decision you made, you in your mind, in your conscious mind, you're like, you know what? God's watching. We would live different lives. And a lot of times
It's tough.
because of our pride and our egos, we think we know best. You know, we go through the motions sometimes.
And it's an awkward feeling.
Yes, it is.
You know, it's a very awkward feeling when you say God is good and not everybody says it, or
Yeah.
You're in a room full of people you don't know and you don't know if you want to say God is good, and then the people kind of give you a weird look,
Well-
or you feel awkward in that situation
Yeah, but
because
in
you
that-
don't know how they feel.
But in that situation, you shouldn't care because you can't control other people's feelings. You got to stay on your
You
stance of what you
shouldn't
believe
care. You shouldn't care. But in your conscious, your self-conscious makes you awkward in
Right.
that position.
Well,
you know?
when you say God is good, though, there's a lot of people sitting, listening, like a John Squires, who's lived his entire life in a chair. He's not feeling the same way.
Right.
And you understand that, you know? If you want to lose family and friends real quick, talk about religion and talk about politics,
Yeah,
which what we're
absolutely.
doing right now.
Yeah.
Because they'll fall. They'll fall by the wayside. Paul, what do you think? I don't think you're a big fan of Trump. Let me say this. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I don't like any of them. I think they're all bought and paid for at the federal level. I'm not a big fan of Trump in this sense. He's very arrogant, very prideful. He's everything God despises, right?
Right.
God wants the lowly, the humble. But when he was president, he was a hell of a lot better of a president than what we have right now. And I think in our society, modern day, that the liberals have caused quite a mess and what goes on and the culture in which we live. Paul, talk to me, Paul. Help me out here. Help me understand. What do you think? What do you think is going on here?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, I think it's terrible anytime we have somebody who is an elected official or is running and campaigning to serve their country to have their life put at risk. I don't condone that. You know, I watched a lot last night of what happened and what occurred. I'm glad that, you know, past President Trump was not injured, you know, more severely.
Right.
I do know that there were people in the audience, though, that, you know, there was a casualty there. So first and foremost, it's awful. Secondly, I do agree with you. I think the political platforms in this day and age, I think that we have these two candidates as our choices because no one else wants to be put through the scrutiny that somebody who runs for president has to go through in this day and age. If it were up to me, I would love to have candidates who are in their 40s and 50s who, are both conservative on some topics, more liberal on others, but are progressive to the point where they want to take what's worked and then build off that and find new ways to, bring about strength within our country. I mean, our current president, I think it's pretty obvious that he's dealing with dementia right now.
For sure.
And, to have him be reelected for 4 more years, I don't think that the mind's going to regenerate and improve over that time through the aging process. So it makes it very difficult to try to really get involved or get behind, politics currently because of the situation that we see ourselves in. We have 2 men who really, have qualified to be retired in our federal system for the past 10 years.
For sure.
Are looking to lead the world and lead our nation. So it almost turns you off at times, or at least it turns me off that, this is what we have to choose from. This is what it's going to look like moving forward. It's just kind of a scary time. And then yesterday happens and you're like, now what's going to happen? Is there going to be retaliation at the Democratic convention? Is there going to be another attempt on Donald Trump as the former president? They both are very polarizing, but I think that's just the environment that we live in. It's so hard to take a middle ground right now because, either the side of the extreme, it's just, saying, oh, well, you will go this way, or you're wavering, or you're vanilla on this. And I really don't think that's the case. I just think it's that the extreme sides have gotten so much attention that's where media has lived. What about the other 80 to 85% that just want to raise their kids and go to the ball game and eat a hot dog and go to church and have a job? It seems like the 2 extremes really are taking the spotlight in social media.
Paul, in the movie Braveheart, William Wallace said that's all they wanted to do, just raise their kids, raise their families. And I think that's a great point. That's all any of us want to do. In my opinion, the powers that be don't want Trump to be back in office. So they're going to do whatever they can to keep him out, whether it's killing him, stealing an election. Trump doesn't go along with the system, with the
machine.
Yes, exactly. And both parties are caught up in that, and they do it. Like Joe Biden's a professional politician. He's been going along with the show for a long time,
5-6 decades.
Yeah. So, Dave, come on, you got to give me something.
I kind of concur with everything Paul just said.
Yeah, and you're talking. Both of you were speaking as men who identify as Christian men, followers of Christ.
Yes, sir.
Correct? Okay. Yeah. Have the floor.
Yeah. So in 2020, we were a solid Trumper. Okay. We had Trump signs in our yard. We were full Trumpers. We didn't want Hillary in there.
Right. That would have been 2016.
Oh yeah, 16. I'm sorry. In 16, we were full Trumpers. Yeah. Okay. Voted for him. Got him in there. I didn't like how he acted as the president of the United States.
Not being presidential.
Right. In my opinion, the president of the United States shouldn't be on Twitter bashing people, shouldn't be commenting on things that he shouldn't be commenting on. You have a whole country to run.
Right.
You should be commenting on things that is needy for the country. He didn't act like a professional. I think the president of the United States should always be professional. You're being held up on that pedestal. You should act professional.
Amen.
So in 2020 come along, I didn't vote for either of them. I didn't like Biden. I didn't think Biden was the choice. I thought they just threw kind of Biden in there just kind of to get Trump out of there.
Right.
So I didn't vote for either of them. And coming to this election, I probably won't vote for either of them again. I'm kind of along the line of as you. I'm not a Democrat, a Republican. I think I'm registered as a Republican just because that's what they asked me when I went in there. And at the time, I voted for Donald, so I put Republican. I voted Barack in. I liked Barack in the beginning. I thought 8 years of Barack wasn't that bad. I thought Barack did some good things. Barack did some bad things. But overall, I didn't mind Barack. at that part, I thought I was a Democrat, you know? So I voted Donald in. So I thought, okay, now I'm a Republican. So I'm kind of just whatever candidate I think is going to be stronghold to hold that position. That's who I'm going to vote for. I don't think, and I concur to Paul where I think it needs to be younger.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you need young people in there, and not necessarily too young. You know, obviously 40s, 50s would be fine, but you need to keep up with the times. And an 85-year-old Joe Biden isn't in today's times. Isn't in, you know, and even Donald Trump isn't young.
Right.
But he has some kind of knowledge when it comes to like economy and things like that. But I think the young president would bring fresh blood and maybe some new ideas, new young ideas that might turn the country around. You know, so I also think that the younger presidential candidate would be better.
And what's that say about the parties, though? The Democrat and the Republican parties that continue to push these old white men on all of us. It's an indictment on both parties and those who continue to support it.
I don't know how we got to that.
You're not changing anything in the government level till you get term limits. You talk about whatever you want. If you can come in and you can run things for as many decades as you want and nothing changes, why would anything change?
Yeah.
If you know you've only got 4 years, you're going to make different decisions. So people can argue about politics all they want.
Well, the thing is the 4 years,
it ain't changing.
It takes that president 4 years to undo what the other president just did. So by the time you get through your 4 years to implement what you want to implement and get rid of what they just did, there's a chance that the new president could come in, cancel all everything you just did, and try to implement something else. So it's a constant revolving door where you're constantly getting rid of the Republican stuff to implement the Democratic stuff, just for the Republican to come back in to get rid of that to get the Democratic stuff.
That's why it's so important when you pick your vice president. Because I couldn't understand during this election with Trump why him and the governor of Florida couldn't come along. Why can't you get along? If it's about the people, why has it got to be about who's got the biggest dick?
Right.
I got the most money. I'm in power. I'm not chasing you. I'm not going to be your vice president. I want to win. If it's about the people, because Trump could have ran for these 4 years. And then let's just say the governor of Florida came in, he can be in for another 8. So now you've just controlled it for 12. But now you have to take your ego and put it behind you to see the bigger picture to help people. But it's not about helping people. It's about your name and where you solidify what I'm going to do.
I'm going to ask
That's why nothing again is not going to change.
I'm going to ask you guys a question, both of you, of the churches you attend, where you go. I've always kind of grown frustrated, the church as a whole in the United States. On Sundays, they always seem to be quiet. They seem to be silent about issues like this that really matter. Is it because they're in the back pocket of the government because of the tax breaks they get? Is that why the pastors don't stand up and speak out? Because to me, I'm like, how can you be a follower of Christ and not get up and speak the truth and live in fear?
I would think it'd be a little bit of, one, they don't want people to judge. And I know that they're the pastor and they shouldn't think like that. But I would think, one, they want people to listen to their message and they want people to accept, to really trust them. But then when you go on some politic rant, half of your congregation isn't going to follow along with you.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
So if they're not going to follow along with you on your political view, they may not follow along with you on your religious view, you know? And ultimately putting people in their seats is what generates the revenue.
Exactly.
So if you're preaching about something that people in the audience may not accept, they may not come back. Right. So you're going to lose people based upon your stance.
Did you guys remember the late Jeff Martell?
Yeah,
yes.
The model.
Yes.
Oh, that was Rick Martell.
No, Jeff Martell.
His granddaughter plays basketball.
Yeah, he passed within this past. It's not too long ago.
6-9 months.
Yeah. Anyways, he was an assistant pastor at Norton Grace Church, and me and him met for lunch one day at the old Parasons. And the whole conversation, I was drilling him about stuff like this, the conspiracy theories, 9/11. I wanted to see what a man of God, a man of faith, when questioned about real stuff, how he would respond. And credit to him, because he was a really good dude. And we sat for about an hour across from each other, going back and forth. But he didn't answer the question suffice for me at the time. It wasn't suffice for me. I just kind of looked at Christian leadership as, you're always going to think or say or do a certain way because of what Dave just said, right? Because they can't go against everything that's going to cause their little world to crumble. Most Christian leaders nowadays look the exact opposite of what Jesus Christ was, in my opinion. What do you say to that, Paul? Like, what do you? Because you're, in effect, you're in Christian leadership. Your whole life, your example, your involvement in, you do funerals.
He was my
you
youth.
marry people.
He was my youth pastor for a long time.
I mean, what do you say to that? Is Zeke of Haiti sits across and points his finger at you, Paul, and says, "Where are you guys?
Right.
Why won't you speak of things of consequence like this when it matters?"
Right. First and foremost, I think there's a lot of merit to what David mentioned. I think when we talk about these type of situations or these type of topics, it can get polarizing at times. And ultimately, as a leader in the church or, being one of Christ's disciples, you want to make sure that if we're talking about these type of things, it's coming out of love. It's not coming out of fear. It's not coming out of judgment. It's really about love and mercy. So I do think that, these type of topics, they do need to be discussed, but I think it needs to be more of an open forum because there's going to be perceptions of people. And like David said, if you start to talk about one thing and 45% of your congregation has a different viewpoint or has a different perspective of what's there, then it can cause division. And ultimately, I think as someone who tries to lead others to Christ, we need to find commonalities. We need to be able to make sure that we understand what truth is, but also that truth's for everyone. And I think a lot of times through political machines or things like that, what happens is people start to say, oh, well, if they feel this way about this, then they're not going to agree with my stance here. Or, well, I don't know if I want to follow them because, I'm here to talk about church and talk about Christ, and we're talking about whatever the topic may be. So I think that as you build rapport and you build stronger relationships with folks, I really think that's when you can make the bigger difference. It's you think about Jesus, he did speak, the Beatitudes and Sermon on the Mount, but most of the parables that you read in the Bible, it's about him being with one or two people, the woman at the well, Lazarus. He's doing those things personally. And I really think that you have to have that mix. On Sundays when you're up on the pulpit and you're preaching to 50 to 500 people, there may be some different topics that you need to talk about and bring up. But I think ultimately it always needs to lead back to who Christ was. What would Christ do in this situation? How do we talk through these things rather than, standing up on like a bully pulpit and saying, this is wrong, you need to do this. I just don't know how much power or strength that's in that. But look at politics. When you are campaigning, that's what you're doing.
Right.
It almost looks totally different than what you would do if you're trying to provide ministry to people.
Bring a congregation together.
Yeah.
That's powerful stuff. So for me and myself, from the time I was a kid, I always wanted to have an impact on the world. What you're
you have.
Well, I would like to think I have, but also along that way, I was very selfish, lots of pride, very arrogant. So when I see Donald Trump, I'm looking in the mirror kind of in a way that God opposes that.
Right.
And God opposed me being that way. And it took a long time for me to mature and humble finally. I'm 51 and I'm just coming around, right?
Me as well. I'm very early in the spiritual journey. 5-6 weeks to where I've really dedicated myself to Christ. I went to church for a long time, when I was little all the way till I was like 21 years old, actually. And then I kind of just grew away. And then I didn't know about Christ, and I started reading about other religions, and I really did my homework on other religions, on why people follow Allah and why does people follow Buddha and what makes them different from Christ. And I really went down this spiritual path to where I didn't want to go to church because I didn't know my way, And a couple things happened probably like 5 or 6 weeks ago to where I looked at my wife and I said, I think we should go to church. And when I went to church the next day, it was that everything happened on a Saturday. And when we went to church on Sunday, I went with an open heart, an open mind. And it was almost like that pastor was talking to me, just to me. And I would look around, and I didn't know if anybody else was going through the same struggles that me and my wife was going through at that time. But I went, and I opened heart, and man, I felt like that went right to my soul. And I started crying, you know. And I felt something come over me to where my burdens was gone. And I know my burdens are still there. But it almost felt like somebody else took a hold of them and said, hey, man, I got these for you. Let me take the lead here, and you just follow along. And you put your trust into me, and I'll get you there. And I can tell you the last 6 weeks of my life, I've bought a house. I have sold a house. Me and my wife have worked together like no other. And some doors have opened up here along the way with my job and things like that. So the past 6 weeks have been so plentiful that I can't say it enough that I'm real early in the spiritual journey, but there's no looking back for me. That I can actually be better now, and I have been reading on ways to get better. So as you at 51 figuring it out, and you're there at the age of 46, I figured it out, and I'm getting there as well.
That gives me goosebumps listening to that. And shame on me, because Paul knows we were raised in the church. We know better, right? He's lived it his entire life for the most part, where I did what I wanted. Yeah, I did what I knew best. Right?
I was raised in the church as well. I was baptized Catholic, strict Catholic church till I was about third grade. Wandered into First Presbyterian Church as a youth. They had one of the biggest youth organizations in the city. It happened to be in my backyard. I wandered in there one day and never left. And I actually became an usher of the church. I was a deacon of the church. I attended the meetings. I was pretty heavily involved until I hit college. And then I got on a flag football team through Akron U. I played on this intramural team. And next thing I know, I wasn't available on Sundays. You know, and then not being available on Sundays, you tend to, if you're not living that life and believing that life 100% all the time, you tend to fade away from that life.
Yeah.
And,
sure.
you know.
And the company you keep, too, along the way.
Absolutely. So flag football, I started traveling the country doing that. It was always on Sundays, always on weekends. I never made it to church. And honestly, that's what led me down the path of, is this really what I wanted? So I started reading and doing research and, you know, do I want to go back to Christianity? Do I want to follow Christ? Do I want to try this religion? What makes this religion better than this religion? And ultimately, nothing makes it anything different, in my opinion. And now some people might have different, but if you practice Allah, or if you practice Buddhism, or you practice Hinduism, any of that, to me, is some kind of spiritual form. And I think it all leads back to the same place. You know, ultimately, people need something to believe in when it comes to a God. Okay, and you can follow that all the way back to the early book of the Bibles when they were you know, following the God of where they built Jericho, and they were following another God, and God came in and tore down the walls. It all leads back to the same place in my mind, you know. And I have done intensive research on different religions to bring myself back to Jesus Christ. So yeah, I'm early, but I don't foresee myself looking back. Just because ever since I have opened that up and took them burdens off, my life has been spectacular.
That's a powerful testimony.
Now, real quick, because you guys had different paths, because you've always had that feel for God, going to church, even when you were in Haiti. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
You were always in the same stance with the church and Christ and stuff like that. Yours was different because you took a different stance and didn't follow the Bible and went your own way, the way you treated some people, the way some of the decisions you made. So it was a different walk that you took. You were looking to find God. Where you found God, you just wasn't following God.
I felt that my good deeds outweighed my bad ones. And I was Zeke of Haiti, and what I said went. And that's the type of arrogance. And that's what I see in a guy like Trump. To me, Trump was a great president, but his arrogance is despised by Almighty God. Almighty God loves the lowly, loves the humble, loves when a guy like Dave Beach says, Lord, I need you. Let me humble myself. That's what the Lord raises up. And you look all throughout the Bible, in all the different stories. Joseph and what his brothers did to him.
Paul, Saul to Paul.
Yes.
Yeah, Saul to
the
Paul.
road to Damascus. We all have that moment. I've asked several people on the show before, when was your road to Damascus moment? I've had several of those, Paul. I've been so hard-headed and so arrogant and so prideful that why God even continues to tolerate me is beyond my understanding. And I always say, if this world is lucky I'm not God, because I would have wiped us all off the face of the planet, starting with myself.
And this is just the past year for you.
Well,
That you've made this big change.
Yeah, and I'll tell you
I'll
tell you one of the places it started was the conflict in the Middle East with the Israelis and Palestinians, with what has happened there. And how it doesn't matter anymore about human life. Human life can be wiped off the face of the planet. Innocent women and children, and nobody cares. And that's when I really started. I should be in Haiti right now with Jimmy Barbecue Shazier. We have a film being made about us and the Haiti revolt. And that's where I should have been. And Paul, and you remember on this show before I said, Paul, when I grow up, I want to be like you.
I remember. Yeah.
I had to change. I had to look in the mirror and say, you know what? I have a family. I have a wife. I have kids that need me here. Stop being so fucking selfish. Stop being about yourself. Stop being about Haiti this, Haiti that, Palestine this, Palestine that, and look at yourself in the mirror and live up to your responsibilities. That's what I had to do.
This is All the Pressure Podcast.
All the Pressure Podcast, yes. And it hurts me to say that, but that was a fact. And you played a role in it.
I love this because I could physically see you changing, and I could care less about the whole Haiti thing or barbecue. Your love for your wife started your change of your arrogance of seeing it.
Yeah.
When you separated from your wife, we were going through the podcast with the females and everything else with Paul, I want to be like you, because you were still arrogant at that point. Because I was like, no, I don't really feel that it's their fault. And you were like, Paul, one day I inspire to be like you.
Yeah.
And at that point, when you were going through your separation, I think that you've seen, you know what? I got to change. My arrogance is killing this.
Yes.
I've got to give in to my wife like you did God.
Yeah.
Like I've got to give her me or this is over.
Yeah.
And at that point, you've changed.
Right.
And it's been this year. It's been, I could physically see it.
Did you guys notice yesterday when Trump was shot? When he got up, he was still throwing his fist to the crowd and almost looked like
he's saying fight.
Yeah. Fight. To me, it looked like fuck. But whatever it was, he still doesn't show or exude a spirit of humbleness at all. And again, give me Trump over Biden any day, please. If Trump and Biden are going against each other, I'm not voting, but if I did vote, I would vote for Trump. Trump was a better president than Biden. To me, it's all a racket at that level anyways. It's all a racket. It's all a lie. And at some point, that's why I get emotional about saying the Christian church, Christian leaders, we need to come together at some point and say enough is enough. And for us that just think, like Dave's talking about a great example of what God's done in his life. But early Christians, they suffered. There was no getting along. There was no being bountiful and plentiful and all those things. They were suffering. They were crucifying those guys, hanging them upside down. So at some point, I believe, Dave Beach and Paul Howe, that as Christian men and Christian leaders, we're going to suffer in these end days. It ain't going to be all nice. It's not going to be all, we're going to watch the Cavs and the Warriors play in the finals again. It's not going to be about that. It's going to be different. You're going to suffer. You're going to lose loved ones. You're going to lose friends and family because of your beliefs. You're going to pay a price for what you're saying you believe in Almighty God, Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Am I wrong?
In my opinion, they're not really your friends or your family members if they disown you over a religious view anyways. Then so be it. That took a lot of humbling because I said it earlier in the podcast. It's awkward. It's an awkward situation to come in full of people that you don't know and say, I am a follower of Christ. And it's not awkward to me anymore, but it's awkward to people. People don't like to talk about religion. People don't like to talk about politics. It's awkward. It's an awkward situation.
Makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah, it makes them uncomfortable.
I think too, if you really think about in the Bible, Christ's life was really only talked about for 3 years. They talk about him being a boy, but then at age 30 is when his ministry really started. And if you really take a look back and see what he went through, the leadership of the times, and those that were in power were the ones that felt the most challenged by Christ. And they were the ones that were pushing, hey, you know what? He's speaking blasphemy. He's trying to do this. He's saying that he's, God on earth. And if you really look at the Sanhedrin and, the leaders, Pontius Pilate and Herod, those were the leaders that were saying, wait a minute, he's starting to get some following. We need to stop this now because we don't want to lose our power. We don't want to lose our influence. And I think that you see Christian leaders when it comes to, what's going on with politics now. I think that times really haven't changed. It's just some of the characters have changed.
Right.
So you're dealing with people in power and not being able to show humility because I got to this position because of my power, because of my personality, because of, what I think my gifts are. And that may look totally different from what an image of Christ would look like. But you're right. How do you try to balance that? How do you, as a Christian leader, try to bring about information and truth that is going to put people in leadership at a place of vulnerability? They don't want to lose that vulnerability. They don't want to lose that power. So it's such a difficult balance. And that's why I continue to go back to to me, it's about personal relationships. It's about when I'm one-to-one with you and you're sharing some information with me, or you're struggling or having a difficult time about something. Let's get to the root cause of that and let's see where we can find some commonalities. At the end of the day, I want to be able to push that, Christ has died for all of us.
Yeah. Amen.
But knowing that, it may take a while for others to see that. I'm like, well, if you don't, accept Christ, then you might as well forget it. Your life's, good luck.
Right.
That's not the calling that I think Christ has. And, he had to go through, everything up to death and, having to be resurrected to finally, I think, convince folks that, okay, this guy is who he said he was.
And they still don't believe him to this day.
Yeah.
My issue was I was always seeing a pastor on stage dressed, suit and tie. That being what a Christian leader looks like, and then thinking about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, sweating blood, knowing he's about to die. Judas betraying him, a brother that sat with him and walked
Peter
with him.
denying him.
Peter denying him, yes. What that would feel like. And Jesus was in human form.
Yeah.
He had emotions like we did. It just looks so much different. And I'm like, the Christianity of today, I've never really wanted to be a part of. I've never felt a part of it. I've never felt that connection. I wanted to be with guys who looked like Jesus, who looked like Peter, who when you look and that Bible opens up and you start reading and it comes to life in your mind and your imagination of what it would have been back then. That I gravitated towards Haiti a lot because of that.
Yeah.
Being in Bible days and the way Haitians live. In any event, we're gonna have to do a part 2 of this because these guys, these guys, I'm so comfortable sitting here talking. I get emotional listening to. I didn't know this about you, Dave. Your story. We'll have to catch up on me and you both being deaf in an ear.
Yeah, man.
I'm gonna give, because we're running short on time here. I'm gonna give you guys a last word each, and then we can do a part 2, Paul. We could have these guys in again because again we haven't even really scratched the surface. There's so much we could talk about. But you got anything else that you wanted to add on?
No, this
Anybody
is a
you want to
pleasure.
say hi to?
No, it's my wife. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. My
that's
kids,
awesome.
they're awesome. But no, I'm not a shout out person. I just want to thank you guys for allowing us on here. It's been a pleasure.
Paul would always give me feedback, and he'd say, I talked to Dave about whatever show we did, and he said, Dave I think he wants to come on.
because he kept saying, man, I said,
"Man,
get
I'll
on."
I'll be a regular. I love to talk. I've always been the loudest guy in the room, only because I'm deaf.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's fascinating.
I love to talk. I'm not shy to it. I'm very knowledgeable when it comes to a lot of things. Well, and if I don't, I make it up.
Your life experience. you
That's
have
the
a lot
Barbara.
Dave, you have a lot of life experience that's that's fascinating and that allows you to be able to discuss and debate all these different
I was
things.
poor. You know, I was dirt poor. We would go without water sometimes. We'd go without electricity sometimes. I kind of just thought that was everybody. You know, I never looked at it. My mom never made it feel like we were poor. There's a lot of love in the house.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought everybody was poor. You know, I started hustling at the age of 12, you know, trying to sell things.
Yeah.
Things. I would sell anything when it come to car stereos, drugs, Uggs, fake Uggs, sunglasses, watches. I would sell whatever it could to pay the bills for my mom. I would pay the bills. You know, my mom would put a hat in the middle of the dining room table. It had all the bills in it, and whatever she picked out that month is what got paid. You know, and then the hat would remain full, and then that hat would get paid the next month, and then we'd throw it all back in the pile, and we'd go again weeks without water, weeks without electric. But I never got new clothes. God bless Dave Horderbaum. I would get Dave Horderbaum's hand-me-downs from the year before. So his clothes from the year before was always my school clothes for the next year. And nobody knew. Nobody knew. Yeah. I always went to school with last year's trends, but nobody knew, you know. And Dave Horderbaum was always respectable. He never said anything to me. He knew it was what happened. Yeah. And Dave Horderbaum was kind of like a big pedestal in Barberton back in the day. He never threw me under the bus. He was always nice. God rest, not God rest his soul, but God bless him for that, and his mom for that, because his mom and my mom are best friends. So I was poor, a lot of hand-me-downs, but I didn't know it. I was a lot of love in my house.
Good.
Well, we're going to have you on again. Believe that, Paul. You got any last things you want to say?
Just a pleasure being with you guys today.
Well, thanks for coming in, Paul.
Yeah, this has been my second opportunity to be on the show, and I was fortunate enough to share the time with John Squires the first time. Yeah. But this time I had an opportunity to share a little bit more in regards to some of my personal walk, as well as go down memory lane for some of the good times. I've really known all three of you for over 3 decades. Yeah. I remember going to Jason's house the night he found out that he had diabetes. Wow. And just let him know he had a friend. And that's where I kind of, in my opinion of you, is where I seen your faith first come to light, is when you found out you had diabetes, because we didn't know about diabetes like we do now with A1C levels and all that. Right. All I knew is my friend had a disease and he was going to have to take shots.
Which, back then we thought was almost a death sentence.
It was February of 1988. And if I recall, didn't you bring me, I think you brought me something for Hal Narragon's. It might have been you that brought me something that Hal Narragon had given to me. It was like a gift card or something.
Yeah, I had a baseball card and he signed it for me. So I gave that to Jason the night I went over. It's just an encouragement. Again, there's that Barberton connection.
As Beach mentioned, the Barberton.
Exactly. And knowing David and through the church, and Dave and Mindy Shire being very helpful to Bonnie and David. David, I give you a ton of credit. I mean, you had it difficult as a kid growing up, and just when I run into you and see you at Acme or see you at a park, I've always been very proud of the man you've become.
I credit that to my mom.
That's awesome.
She was a huge influence in my life when it come to everything.
Bonnie's a tough woman, and she had to be.
She's still alive. She's still kicking.
Good to hear.
A woman named Bonnie gave birth to you?
Yep.
My mother's name is Bonnie, too.
That's
good stuff.
Yeah.
And I go to church with your mom every Sunday.
You do. Yes, you do. I want to tell you, you're one of the finest human beings I've ever known, and there's a reason why I want you to officiate my funeral. And so no, I wouldn't want anybody else on this earth doing my funeral service other than Paul Howe. The legend,
I credit a lot of my positivity when I was a kid to you and Mindy Schreiner or Mindy Shire. Yeah. Paul and Penny Borton. Oh yeah. Mike and Sue Brzezinski. Yep. I put you guys to a lot of trauma, because I was a young adolescent boy who tend to do things the wrong way.
Just surviving.
And you guys really, really had a lot of patience with me. You guys would take me aside. You guys would kick me out of church. You guys would bring me back with open arms. You guys guided me to the man I am today.
Thanks for sharing
You
that.
guys had a big part of that. And
Appreciate
every
that.
time I see you, man, regardless if it's at Acme or the park or
Yep.
sports, you know, a lot of times I've seen you in church softball a lot
Oh,
too.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're always a good person,
Thanks, man.
You always help me out a lot.
Appreciate you.
My
Yeah.
phone's been vibrating in my pocket the whole time. Like I was getting phone calls from Haiti.
Oh, boy.
And, but anyways, yeah, Paul, we love you, man.
Love you guys, too.
Beach,
Yeah,
love you.
absolutely. Thanks a lot, guys.
So thankful, Paul. You got any last words?
Nope.
Josh, once again, thanks. So we're gonna do this again, Josh. So
Part 2 to be continued.
Part 2 to be continued. Give me my music, Josh. Let's get out of here. God bless y'all.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Fix that. I don't really hold out the books, but I'ma learn how to fix that. Some opportunities are never come unless you're paying attention, so no, I can't miss that. Moving MVP, I got the record, I might